Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and for today's video we are continuing our Down the Line series looking at the Tier 8 light cruiser here. This is the USS Cleveland. Now, right out the gates, I have to talk a lot about the Cleveland in regards of what she is as a ship, what she does, where she finds herself in the meta nowadays, and I have to also comment on a couple of the things that I posted earlier on in this video in regards to captain builds and module upgrades. So a lot of stuff to cover. That's why this video is going to be, or potentially could be a little bit longer than they usually are. So bear with me because this ship, there's a lot to talk about. First things first, this ship is a blast. I'll get that right out the gates. I'll just tell you right off the get-go. This ship is a blast to play. She is super fun. She's super competitive, and she is super strong. A lot of players, I think, fail with the Cleveland is because they try to play her too aggressively. And that usually tends to lead them to blow up in glorious fashion. The Cleveland is excellent at supporting enemy destroyers and supporting allied cruisers and allied battleships with suppressing fire as well. The consumable loadout of all these ships is phenomenal. And starting here at Tier 8, we get access to the Surveillance Radar consumable, which we'll talk about a little bit more, which is making these ships extremely impactful on the battlefield. And they really can push a little bit more aggressively if need be. They can certainly defend caps a little bit easier. It just basically makes the ship a little bit more versatile and really starts emphasizing what I've been talking about all along, which that these ships are some of the best support ships in the game for what they do. As they kind of are, they are effective against everything a little bit. Not like super duper strong. I'd say the only thing they're incredibly strong against is destroyers. But they are strong against the other two as well. I mean, we could even go against aircraft carriers as well and say they're strong against CVs. Though the only counter they have to submarines is the hydroacoustic surge at 2 kilometers, or if they're on periscope depth up to 5. And the surveillance radar if they are on the surface. They don't have access to sub-surveillance radar, so they cannot see if they are submerged. But then again, hopefully the two tools that are already listed, hydro and radar, are enough for you to generally pinpoint the general direction of the enemy submarine. But going on to what I'm talking about with the Cleveland as it is. Now, the Cleveland, we've persevered through the Helena, and the Helena was a blast for me. Obviously, you had, 15 guns, 152 American Freedom, screaming down range, I believe at, 8.5 seconds? 8.5 seconds, I believe, right? Well, now the Cleveland has that same, but we have 12 guns. Okay, so we drop a turret, theoretically, but we do pick up better reload time at 6.5 seconds, and we gain surveillance radar. Obviously, we have no heal still, but that's okay. If we know the strengths of our ship, we can play around that. Again, this ship further continues down the line's identity of island wanking, with the floatier shell velocity, the ability to lob shells over islands is extremely impactful, and can be very much of a big deterrence for enemy pushes just because of the sheer amount of fire coming down range from these 152 main battery guns and rifles here. What else is there to talk about the Cleveland? Well, going over my captain builds for the ship. And as you know, there are 2 captain builds that I highlighted. I use both. I do use both. I do have a dedicated Cleveland commander that utilizes the second build, but I do flip-flop other commanders around every time and again. They are trained for the Cleveland. Well, actually, one other one, which I believe is my Al Montpellier commander, which I have built for more of the anti-aircraft fighting role. Now, right out the gates, I'm not going to say spend and invest the points of 4 and 2 for 6 for AA, just because that's 6 points that theoretically could be dispersed elsewhere within the captain skill tech tree. But this ship does have potent anti-aircraft and can very much deal with enemy aircraft from Tier 8 to Tier 6. Tier 10 is a little bit different. I think Tier 10, it can do kind of what we saw at the Helena, which is really only do good AA damage to aircraft that are flying overhead or after they've gotten their initial strike off, dealing with the counter strike, like the initial strikes that come after it. That's when you're going to see the plane shot down and losses start to tile up. But from tier 8 and tier 6 aircraft carrier or aircraft coming in to attack the ship and strike it, you can really much deter an enemy aircraft carrier. And theoretically, with the defensive A fire consumable up and running, the flak bursts can absolutely neutralize an entire squadron. I've done it multiple times. The ship is definitely capable of doing that. Aircraft commanders should be aware of the Cleveland, though. If you do have hands, know how to dodge, reconcile your squadrons. Shouldn't be too much of a threat to you. The only real threat comes after that initial strike when you're recalling your squadron to go back to your aircraft carrier. That's when you'll see some losses. Again, shouldn't pile up too much if you know what you're doing, but it is possible. So that's the first captain build with the A build. The second build, I think, is more of a general balanced Cleveland build. You're buffing your consumables, how long they last. You're buffing the reload charge of your consumables, which again is allowing your Cleveland to be more impactful for either longer durations and for faster durations to get it up more frequently to support your caps and allied destroyers. The ship is very, very good at doing those things, which is just fulfilling that supportive role. And I cannot stress that to you guys enough. Though on the first build, the thing that's why I don't take the consumable recharge tier 1 skill is because actually if you read the tier 4 skill, that AA skill, it does, while your AA is active, it actually does reduce your consumable reload by 50%. Very niche. Are you actually going to get any use out of that? Probably not, but you do have it so that if you're in those double CV games, which are very prominent at tier 8, this is more likely to proc for you, and you will actually get really good use out of this, especially with dumb CB players, allowing you to utilize your consumables more to support the role. So it's basically doing essentially the same thing, but really trying to emphasize more of that anti-aircraft suppressing role, which the Cleveland can do with or without those skills already. With the skills, it's going to do it better, faster, and really deal with enemy squadrons probably overall better. If you choose not to take any of those AA skills or just the 2-point captain skill there, you can still very much deal with anti-aircraft. You're just buffing your raw DPS more if you take the tier 4 and I believe your depth charge damage as well to kind of do more supportive role with dealing with submarines. But again, we don't want to talk too much about this stuff. This is all stuff you're going to see and hear me talking and preaching more about as we get deeper into the analysis here of the Cleveland. Let's go ahead and send our commander to the reserve and start talking about the armor layout and kind of what makes this ship tick. So going to the armor layout, initially you're going to see we take a big jump from 16 millimeters effective armor to 25. Now this is going to help us a little bit with those heavy cruisers, those like super cruisers, Aegir's, Kronstadts, Alaskas. It's going to allow us a little bit more leeway with those ships. Again, not much. You're still a light cruiser. I would try to avoid engaging those ships unless you're concealed or behind an island or in cover, or at least the tide of combat is really in your favor. Like you're kind of in your element is what I'm trying to say. But you do pick up the 25 millimeter nose. You have this 25 millimeter of mid-ship section and the 25 millimeter ass. You can still very much get overmatched by 380 millimeter gun battleships and higher, which would be no problem for you. Your deck is 27 millimeters of armor. Again, heavy cruiser HE spam is still going to go right through that, though light cruisers, I believe it will shatter. But because your ship is, superstructure mainly, it's not just mainly deck, it's mainly superstructure, it's going to be hitting that most of the time, which is going to be free farm session. We go ahead and peel away some of the layers of armor, and you're going to see we do have a citadel that is above water, clocking in at 127 millimeters of effective armor. Again, looking at kind of what we've seen with the Helena and the Dallas a little bit, the citadel is mainly mid-ship. So when you're shooting the ship, don't aim under the turrets. You want to aim mid-ship section underneath those smokestacks and coning tower. That's where you're going to get your juicy citadel ribbons. But The Cleveland does have a few tricks up her sleeve in regards of her armor. Her armor scheme is what I like to call black hole. I don't know if it's spaced armor, if it's just extremely light, and the caliber of shells coming in to shoot at her are just too big usually, and they just overpen. But the Cleveland gets away with a lot of overpen, especially when it's flat broadside. I like to call this the Smolensk effect. This sets, especially when you clearly are hitting where the Citadel is, but you're not getting Citadel ribbons. You're either getting overpens or penetrations. You're not getting Citadels. The Cleveland flat broadside is incredibly tanky. So that's why the armor, I wouldn't really pay too much mind to me saying how, rather poor or lackluster her armor is. It's still very much there. But because she is relatively narrower, I would say, not the narrowest, but narrower, and because she has low armor in regards to her threshold, you're going to find yourself getting overpenned or just full penned, not necessarily Citadel ribboned. But the second you angle, like as most cruisers should, because you want to kite, you actually will increase your effective armor in millimeters and allow shells that penetrate and that would overpen usually to penetrate and detonate within your Citadel, scoring juicy Citadel ribbons. So you have to keep that in mind and be careful. It's one of those things you have to like fight the urge to do, but again, there's a time and a place for it. Obviously, you still should angle away. But when you're up close and personal at ranges, maybe it is good to sail flat broadside to I don't know, a Kremlin at 5 kilometers because the guy will go right through and not strike Citadel. I mean, I don't want to say and give guys bad advice. I would still very much angle, but you understand, everyone knows what I'm talking about when it comes to armor in this game. It doesn't reward necessarily the right play style all the time, and I think that's what's incredibly frustrating to battleship players is because cruisers can sometimes get away with bloody murder, and then cruisers get pissed because when they're angling, it feels like they can't mitigate damage. So it's this kind of unstoppable force versus immovable object argument that we seem to find ourselves here in World of Warships. It's always been a problem, always been a dilemma. So going into survivability, I think I might have my flags on. No, I do. Do I not? Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. The base yeah, the health of the Cleveland is coming in at 36,900. Now, I should have said this out at the get-go. I am going to be comparing this thing heavily to the AL Montpellier, which is the sister ship of the Cleveland class cruiser. It is a Cleveland class cruiser itself. That's for the whole Azura Lane event. In my humble experience, the AL Montpellier is a Cleveland class cruiser that tries to accomplish the same role, but has just subtle things buffed and nerfed on the ship to distinguish it from the Cleveland. I still think the Cleveland's the better ship, but for those that want to have a premium version of the Cleveland, well, the AL Montpellier is there and viable. So again, 4% torpedo belt reduction. Don't be taking torpedoes. You have the tools necessary to not take torpedoes, so you don't want to be taking torpedoes in this thing. Going to the artillery, which is the 4x3 152 millimeter setup. Reloading in 6.5 seconds, 180-degree turn time of 18 seconds. Now, it is interesting to note about these turrets wargaming, as you're going to see me putting up here on the screen right here. Wargaming did make some changes to the Cleveland, as they changed the entire line in total. These turrets can now turn 360 degrees, which again is super nice. Not realistic, I don't believe, but I'm, for one, am welcoming this change, as the Cleveland, for me, it's not like anyone's bitching about how overpowered the Cleveland is, though the Cleveland was already strong, and this is going to allow her to be more flexible and even stronger. Her gun firing angles are exquisite. I do really find them to be incredibly comfortable and easy to use, so it really shouldn't be a drawback when using the ship in regards of getting all 12 main battery shells on target. Dispersion's great. Maximum range is 15.6. Her dispersion, again, going on to that at max range, which is what? Basically 16 kilometers. You're looking at 143 millimeters of horizontal and 87 meters of vertical with a sigma of 2.0. Now, the AL Montpellier, the big difference between the two ships is that you're dropping DPM, but you're increasing your sigma and your accuracy of the guns. So I guess you're going to be more reliably hitting the target. again, it's one of those things that if I take aiming systems, which I recommend on the Cleveland, I really don't notice that big of a difference between landing shells on a ship and not. I think maybe it's equivalent to 1 to 2 more shells on target, especially when it comes to DDs. I still think the faster firing Cleveland at sub 9 kilometers is going to deal with destroyers better than the AL Montpellier. Again, we're really splitting hairs here if we're deciding which one is the better destroying destroyers, right? So they both really fill that niche. It just depends on if you have a Cleveland or if you want to play Montpellier. Going into the high explosive shells for the ship, you are clocking in at 2200 maximum damage with a 12% fire chance. With Demo Expert and the flags, you can get up to 14%. Your fires per minute base is 13.3, and I can guarantee you that's going to go skyrocketing once you get the flags on there for about the high 14s, if not 15. This ship is a flamethrower. You saw it with the Helena. You will be starting a lot of fires with the Cleveland. That is a no-brainer. And HE is going to be your primary armament, primary shell type, I would say. Again, coming in with that initial shell velocity of 812 meters a second. So flight time for your maximum range around 15, 16 kilometers is you're looking around 11.8 seconds, landing at around 50 kilometers. 16 kilometers, you're around 13.1 seconds. That is going to take to travel. These are floatier shells. Again, pros and cons to that. You can island wank with these. That's the pro. Con is open water, especially against faster destroyers like Littoral and what's another one? Kiev. They're going to be pretty fast, and you're going to have to lead them way more. So as long as you get your gunnery skills down and your aiming down, you're going to be reliably landing shells on target and dealing really good damage with those shells. Going into the armor piercing shells, you have 3,200 as a maximum damage. And again, your shell velocity, as we've seen, is going down to 762. I've talked about this. You're really not going to notice that because at closer ranges, you're probably going to be switching to AP against slightly armored targets, maybe potentially battleships that are going broadside that are ignoring you, that kind of stuff. It's really not going to be a determining or a factor that you're going to really know too much. It's going to feel pretty darn comfortable and comparable to that of the HE. Again, a side note, as we talked about with this entire line, you are getting the 0.010 second fuse time. AL Montpellier actually gets the same as well. And at your maximum range, you are getting 96 millimeters of effective penetration from this armor piercing. If you're at, let's say, that 9 kilometer range, that radar range, let's say you pop it and there is a smoke wanker like a Harbin or an Edinburgh, you're actually clocking at 139 millimeters of penetration, which is enough to citadel those ships if they are flat broadside and not actively angling and increasing their armor threshold. So pretty cool. Again, the 0.010 second fuse time I didn't really know about until I started doing this down the line series. So that's always cool. Even though I noticed I was getting more citadel ribbons and penetrations with this line and less overpens. So, and that would explain it, right? So going to your secondary battery, you have these 6x2 127 millimeter secondary mounts. These are dual purpose. They reload in 6 seconds, have around a 6.9 kilometer maximum range. The damage clocking in is about 1800 with a fire chance of 6%. They can pen 21 millimeters of armor. And again, the shell velocity is not that important because you aren't the one shooting them. It is automated. They're here for the occasional fires, but mainly for the anti-aircraft abilities of these guns. And when we talk about the AA, we'll get into that a little bit more. Thank God we have 2 attack flights that actually drop 2 bombs now per payload for our ASW. That is awesome. We can actually do decent work against enemy submarines for once and not have to rely directly dropping it right on the head of them. We have a little bit more leeway, a bigger radius that we can potentially deal with submarines. So that's also super nice. Again, with my first build, we're going to up our damage on our depth charges, which is already clocking in at 4,200. I believe we can get that up even more, which again is great for dealing with enemy submarines. So the anti-aircraft fire of the Cleveland, which is very respectable in my opinion. I think it should be even more respectable, but Wargaming, they want to give the newer ships better AA to encourage you to get them and grind them rather than give the old ones stagnant AA. The Cleveland has decent amount of AA though. 5.8 kilometers is the long range with 98 DPS, medium 3.5 kilometers with 205 DPS, in short range at 2 kilometers at 247. Your flat count is 4+1. which is great. That's why I take the number 2 captain skill, the 2-pointer, which is going to increase our flak again by 1. You have these 20 millimeter mounts, which are scattered all around your vessel, which are going to be more, I guess, towards your short range. Your 40 millimeter Bofors are scattered around the vessel as well, which are going to rely more on your medium range. Um, and you have also the 40 millimeter double Bofors with 56 Bofors MK2 mounts, which are again more mid deck. Um, you have those as well, again, adding to your mid range. I don't think those are counting to your long range, but your long range are those 127 dual purpose mounts scattered throughout the vessel. Clicking with a grand total continuous damage of 323 raw continuous damage, with your flak explosions doing about 1,617 damage with a hit probability of 90%. Very respectable numbers here on the Cleveland. I would say you're definitely making very short work of tier 6 aircraft. I would say if you're a tier 6 aircraft carrier, don't even try to engage the Cleveland. Tier 8, you could get away with striking him, but at a massive cost. And tier 10, you should be able to receive minimal damage to your aircraft's minimal losses, but definitely all the damage is going to be felt on his end. So going to the maneuverability of the USS Cleveland, you are clocking with a max speed of 32.5 knots, rudder shift time of 7.2, with a turning circle radius of 660 meters. I do take the propulsion system in my slot 4, so I can start and stop a little bit better, island wank, and sit my smoke screens with my hydro on, so that I can free farm. You're not really going to be open water gunboating this thing, and if you do, the propulsion mod should still allow you to engine juke ships, not necessarily rudder juke ships. Going to the concealment, you're clocking in, I believe, I don't want to make sure it's right, at 11.5 detection by sea. You slot in slot 5, you slot the concealment module, which is getting down to 10.4. You put your commander on there, and it's going down to 9.3. Now, why is that important threshold? Well, because we go to our radar consumable, which is 9 kilometers. So there's a 300-meter gap between when you get detected and when you can press your Y key to spot what's detecting you. Very, very competitive, very, very impactful. Really gives the enemy destroyer or enemy ship 0 time to react. Matter of fact, if you start reacting, you're going nose on, all you're going to do is open up flat broadside to the guy. So again, cap contesting, driving ships out of smoke, cap defending, is very, very, very strong ship to put in those situations. And you definitely want to be playing around the objectives with this vessel. Again, I'll just show it again. This is kind of what my upgrades look like for the ship. You can see these are the signals that I kind of recommend on the ship as well. I do go full try hard on this ship. I love the ship, and this is one of my go-to ranked battleships I play with, just because she is so good. And it's really hard to find a ship that does all this that the Cleveland does. The biggest downside to the Cleveland is just her survivability, because she has no heal. That's really the big thing I can see. There are some gunboat DDs that can make work of this thing at ranges. But if you get within the base detection of this ship, your destroyer, most competent Cleveland players will be able to still hit you, and I wouldn't highly recommend that. Again, but it all depends on the skill level of the players who are engaging between Cleveland and said destroyer. So, but yeah, touching base on the Cleveland, the Montpelier, another difference that the Montpelier gets, it actually gets 3 additional seconds to its radar. But that's why, to counteract that, I just take the Cleveland's radar mod in that second slot. Show that right here, which is just going to up the action time by 20%. So it really nullifies that. You could do that in the AL Montpelier as well, which is going to make it even longer. It's a really minute change that I really don't see really swaying the question of Cleveland or Montpelier one way or the other. It's just, again, another little change that Wargaming decided to do. I think they went down the entire cruiser line back in the day and tried to make it all the same. They did something like that. I don't really remember. But yeah, that is another little change. One thing I would not recommend doing, I believe it is in the radar slot there. You can exchange it for a spotter plane and a fighter. Just don't. This doesn't make any sense. Radar's just too impactful. you would not want to not run radar in almost every situation possible, because your shell velocity already is so shit. The point of putting a spotter out there to extend your range even further, it would just be griefing at that point, and it's just not worth it. So I've tried it. Believe me, I played a game in her, didn't like it. That game also I could have actually used radar multiple times, and I didn't have it. And yeah, especially one of my destroyer players was like, radar, Cleveland radar. I'm like, yeah, well, sorry about that, buddy. I actually don't have it. So don't be that idiot like I was. It's just not the way to play the ship. So, but anyways, guys, that is the Cleveland in a nutshell. She is a phenomenal ship. I had a blast playing her, and hopefully I can share some tips and tricks with you about her in battle here. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, guys, and here we are in battle with the USS Cleveland. We are in a tier 8 game, I would like to believe, so we are top tier, which is very nice. It's always a treat when you're a tier 8 cruiser, or just a tier 8 ship in general. You're not going against tier 10s for fuck's sakes. It's definitely a good day to cause mass amount of celebration, because +2, -2 matchmaking, as I've said it in all my videos, is a fucking pisser. So, uh, some tips and tricks I have with the Cleveland. Was that a tier 9? Is it the Jaeger in front of me? Let me fucking look. Uh, oh fuck, it is a tier 9 game. Okay, it's a tier 9 game. So okay, it's not a big deal. Whatever. Edit that shit out. But yeah, so the first thing, some tips and tricks I have with the Cleveland, like I kind of stated with the Helena, is you want to know where you're going right off the get-go. Hopefully your DDs, excuse me, will go and contest caps or at least spot for you. That's one of the biggest things I can say that they can do. And I'm going to actually go find an island and I'm going to hug that shit. You have to, guys, especially early in game with all those battleships. Usually I would say there's no less than 4 battleships in every game nowadays. If you get less than that, what a fucking treat as a cruiser player. If it's more, it doesn't surprise me. But yeah, you want to go and you want to find an island and you want to make sure you position yourself where you can launch your shells over top of that island and hit targets reliably, especially those within caps to assist with the enemy destroyer, but also not necessarily spotted in return. I know it is a skill you just will learn through failure and time again. And again, having map awareness is another big thing too. I mean, we've played the same maps now for how many years, so you guys should know the maps in and out. Looking forward to the new maps that Wargaming is going to announce here, though, hopefully. I know they said there might be in production of one, so that'll be huge. But yeah, we're going to find an island, and we're going to spam HE over top of it because that's what we want to do. We want to deter ships. I'm telling you right now, as this York, when I'm seeing 12 HE shells coming in at me, I don't want to keep going in the general direction of these HE shells. I want to either get under cover or I want to fucking tuck tail and turn around and run, just because of the firepower that these ships have. There's 2 fires instantly on him. He puts it out. I'm loving that because guess what I'm going to do? I'm only going to shoot him now to ensure that I get more fire set on him to keep him ticking for longer and longer and longer. Again, a little side note here. There's our permanent fire, by the way. A little side note here. As a cruiser player, one advice I just want to give cruiser players in general is you just don't want to be the first ship spotted in a game ever at all as a cruiser. That is basically saying everybody shoot me here. Every battleship will try to cross map clap you. Every battleship will pop their spotter planes. It's just a disaster, and you're going to lose HP. Obviously, there's some cruisers and there's some builds like lighthouse builds, etc. Like I understand, I get it, but you have to go into it with like knowing that. Moskva's another big one. Stalingrad, usually Soviet cruisers, right? You just got to know your detection values and know where you think the enemy destroyers are going to go and where you're pre-planning on going. That's a big, very big advice to you, especially in a Cleveland here. I don't want to be the first cruiser spotted. One, it nullifies my radar gimmick, right? Because DDs will know to theoretically avoid my radar range. And also they will necessarily know that, okay, this is a Cleveland. He has no torpedoes. Battleships can push him, yada, 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 and so and so. Also shoot me here and blow me up. Cleveland is very vulnerable, I would say, at long-range plunging fire from AP, from battleships, because it slows the AP down enough to when it hits and penetrates, it loses penetration at range, and that's when it gets nuked. So that's why beginning games for Clevelands, that's when Clevelands are going to get dev struck, usually. Usually the later you get in games, when you get to closer and closer engagements, you don't really see it as much unless the Cleveland thus angles to specific ships that know where to shoot. That's kind of my caveat with the Cleveland. But as you can see from an offensive perspective, again, not being spotted at all, just going forward and backward with behind my island, picking targets to shoot at. just setting everything ablaze. Again, you don't want to be in the range of this thing, especially when it's not detected, because it'll just burn you out. It will physically burn you out. And this is a trait you will see going up to the Seattle. This is a trait especially you will see at the Worcester. These ships do this very, very good. And I know a lot of people are like, well, this is just damage farming. This is just damage farming. I get it. I get it, guys. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I will actually go a little bit further on my own little opinion, floppy opinions here, which is this is actually a form of team play. In the essence of very niche, which is basically me saying that it is a deterrence for a lot of ships, and they usually make rash decisions like, oh, let me turn out real quick, showing flat broadside to my battleships on the flank. That's the element of team play it is. Very much so it is damage farming, not necessarily contributing to overall like team play. But this is when we shine. The enemy DD is spotted. He doesn't seem to have any, I guess, recognition that we're right here, and we come out and we go at him. I know where the battleships are. I know where their guns are facing. I can see his smokestacks. I radar right away, keeping him lit, knowing he's going to start going forward, picking my spots perfectly, and I'm going to engage the enemy destroyer to do as much damage as possible. This guy surely thought he was going to kill our Jaeger, which I don't know, did he kill our Jaeger? I'm not even 100% sure. He might have killed our Jaeger. Fuck. But that's okay. Jaeger was already low HP anyway. I think he took a massive salvo or torpedo in the early in game. So, whatever. But we did some damage. We deterred him a little bit to push him away. Again, subtle win for us. Too bad we didn't neutralize him, but I guess it's too much to ask for all your teammates to shoot the target. Even though there is, what, a Colorado, me, and whatever ship's on my left. I can't see. But yeah, notice how I'm reversing here. I just, with the torpedoes incoming and the enemy Viasma here, I just have to be careful knowing that, you know, this guy could burst fire and he could theoretically go right through my schnoz with his 406s because the Viasma is the definition of balance in this game. So I'm just trying to use, you know, as much mitigation tools as possible, which is just reversing, and I'm going to go forward as well. I do think he dies with a salvo. Does he get a salvo off? I'm not 100% sure. I've fought so many fucking Viagras nowadays. It's just like pissing me off. I hate these ships. But here's a good example of those 360-degree turrets, allowing me to keep my, I guess, turrets to bear a little bit better. Yeah, he gets an HE salvo off. That's awesome. And take minimal damage from it. So fucking right. It's a good thing he had HE loaded. So we're going to go ahead and push in. Obviously, I am RPF'd by the enemy Cossack. I would like to believe there is an enemy York somewhere kicking around behind that island, so I want to make sure that I am honoring his 210mm guns, while also keeping in mind that my hydroacoustic search is now down, and I have to be aware of incoming torpedoes as well. So I am sailing a little bit broadside to where I think he's going to be, but I'm doing it because I want to see if I can get in the cap first. At the initial sign of him getting detected, I will alter my course and change, but that's my initial point. I wouldn't highlight or say definitely sail broadside to your target, especially a cruiser with 210. I only said that to battleships at close range. I wouldn't say cruisers, as they have smaller gun calibers and usually less penetration, right? So he's already low HP. He's trying to island wank. I don't necessarily blame him here, but he's so out DPM'd and outclassed in almost every way possible that we're going to go ahead and kill him and make short work of this guy. I think he only gets like one salvo off on us, which he has like a 13-second reload. And in the meantime, he is toast. So we go ahead and take him out of the game while we're contesting the cap. I do think that the enemy Cossack will try to avoid us, but go after our battleship buddy. It's kind of my theory. So I really wouldn't have to worry too much about the enemy Cossack, but I do think he'll probably launch one more set of torpedoes in my vicinity, and then he'll try to double back and sneak around and hit our battleships, not necessarily the cruiser, because he knows I'm going to push into the next cap, which they've had, their base cap. So already clocking in at 78,000 damage. And again, this is the non-bullshit channel. I'm not going to cherry pick fucking 300,000 damage games and say, now go out here and do it, guys. You guys are capable of doing this. No, I don't brag on myself. I don't boast in myself. I do this because I want to shed light on these ships and really, you know, try to teach the best I can without sounding like a condescending fucking prick. I do love the game, and it does pain me to see ships played criminally wrong or built criminally wrong. You know, and a side note about my captain builds, again, if you disagree with my captain build, that's awesome. You don't have to spec your ship with the captain. These are just ones that I've done that I can verify and say it works. It works for me, so it should theoretically work for you. They're not necessarily in mind of bouncing commanders from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10. If that's you hate, that's fine. Again, A lot of the same skills are being utilized here for this line, so it should be easy to transfer over. Again, I build specifically for the ships because I usually don't bounce commanders from ship to ship. That's usually not what I do. I do it on some ships, very niche, very small amount of ships, but mainly I don't do that because it's just not fun for me. I like to use all the unique commanders. I like to have them all over the place, so that's what I do. That's how the way I play the game. You guys play the game. You want to play the game. I'll play the way I want to play. But I feel like I should shed some light on what makes these ships different and strong. And again, these builds work for me. So again, here was a big brown alert moment. Thank God the Cossacks torpedoes were spotted by my hydroacoustic search so that I could slow down and dodge these. Obviously, you can see with that propulsion mod, allowed me to dodge these. Rudder shift might have allowed me to dodge those as well. As you can see, there's a massive gap between 1 and 2 torpedo there. But again, I think the propulsion mod is just going to be way more useful in more situations than a rudder shift mod. If this was an open water cruiser, yeah, I'd probably recommend the rudder shift mod. But I think prop mod is going to be just more impactful, especially on a light cruiser here. Especially the way you're supposed to play her, which at least the way I play her and find great success in her. So, but pretty much as the battle winds down here, I think the Cossack goes behind and our other Cleveland goes and finds him. He might have RPF. Another skill you could theoretically take and drop, other skills that I recommend. Again, RPF is very, very useful when you're hunting DDs. But realistically, DDs, if you have a brain, you know kind of where the DDs are going to be going. You don't need RPF, so to speak, especially when you have the ability to stealth radar. I think those ships are... I don't want to poo-poo it because I definitely see where people come from. I just don't want to invest 4 points to know where the closest target is to me. You know, that's just, again, that's just me. But again, with the Cleveland too, I don't think the Cleveland needs it. I don't think the Seattle needs it. I don't think the Worcester needs it. I think you're going to get better skills, better use for your points than, you know, than putting it on RPF. Again, if you disagree with me, fucking rights. Take RPF. I don't care. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, like it's a good game. Again, these ships, especially Cleveland, right? They really excel at contesting and fighting over capture points. These ships do have very much great carry potential. I've seen that. I've won a lot of games, you know, especially when it didn't look too good, just because the ship I was in was the Cleveland, Worcester, Helena, you know, Seattle potentially, like these ships, right? And again, I'm proficient in these ships. I have the E proficiency badge. Doesn't really mean much. I'm just saying that I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to, you know, these specific ships. And I love them to death. Obviously, being from North America, you know, playing North American, or sorry, you know, America's ships are a blast. I love them. And the Cleveland doesn't disappoint. I mean, this thing used to be at tier 6, like I mentioned in my videos previously. Can you imagine? And they didn't change much either when they bumped her up to tier 8. So just how overpowered and broken was the Cleveland back in the day, fighting Omahas and other battleships, to where it is now at tier 8, where it still can do the same damn thing. So keep that in the back of your back pocket and think about that one for a little bit. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, again, not a high damage game, but the game did emphasize what I was trying to talk about, and really what makes the Cleveland a fun ship and a good ship, and especially a competitive ship. I would recommend this line to a lot of people. Is it a noob-friendly line? I don't know. I really don't know. I would probably go down the Des Moines line first. But that's just my opinion on the matter. I think the Des Moines is just going to be, again, more consistent in more battles than a Worcester is. But that's just light cruisers in general, I would like to say. The state of light cruisers is kind of, you know, meh. In the way they are, with battleships overmatching everything and all that stuff, and damage and armor thresholds. So, but I do love them. I think my favorite class type in the game is light cruisers, just because they are the ultimate team ship. I like these ships, and I really love going and soloing a 1v1 battleship, and beating them, because they always think they're going to shit pump you and destroy you, and yeah, all they have is what, direct overmatch over me. So, but they're fun ships. They're a blast. So, and the Cleveland does not let you down. I know I sound like a broken record here, guys, but the Cleveland will not let you down. And if you're struggling in the Cleveland, follow the tips I listed about islands, stick with HE, and support caps and support your allied ships. You know, that's the best thing it can do and tell you with this ship. Propulsion mod is crucial. If you get detected, guess what? Pop that radar and see what's spotting you. as your ship is extremely competitive and it can make quick work of enemy destroyers and most cruisers too. So anyways, as a final result here, this is just a 1 rank game. I thought it was a good video and highlighted a lot of the good and the bad of the ship, but mainly the good, right? So anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, peace out.